And so we come to the 10-minute rule motion. Mr. Grahame Morris.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I endeavour to follow your advice about good temper and moderation. Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to establish a duty on Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service and private sector operators to minimise violence in prisons and for connected purposes. And first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to all staff working in prisons. It's an incredibly challenging job, and even more so with COVID and the many challenges they face with the latest Omicron wave. Over 90% of prisons are currently outbreak sites, and I'm told by the Prison Officers Association trade union this is up from just 3 establishments a month ago. This has caused critical staffing shortages, as well as, of course, all the dangers to public health that follow. On top of this recent threat to the health of staff and prisoners, there's the ever-present threat to their safety too from prison violence. The sky-high level of violence plaguing our prisons makes rehabilitation inside practically impossible, meaning offenders often leave prison more damaged and dangerous than when they arrive. And that leads to more reoffending, costing tens of billions of pounds a year and causing misery for millions of victims and their loved ones who have to live with the consequences of even more crime. The prison lockdowns throughout the pandemic have thankfully reduced assaults from the all-time highs that we saw in 2019, but ministers must now learn the right lessons and not rely on long lock-ups in the future or revert back to a business-as-usual approach. The new Prison Strategy White Paper is a golden opportunity, Madam Deputy Speaker, for urgently needed change if ministers will only commit to doing whatever it takes to tackle both prison violence and indeed the causes of prison violence. And my bill aligns with the White Paper's stated aim to reduce prison violence and uses the paper's framework of key performance indicators, or KPIs, or management targets in common parlance, to achieve this. KPIs are already used in private prisons to reward or penalise their operators, but the government's new strategy extends these targets and adds new ones to public sector prisons too. It's obvious that these new KPIs need to include safety. Safety both for prisoners and for staff, but curiously this commitment is entirely missing from the White Paper. My bill seeks to correct this omission. It would enshrine a statutory duty on prison management, whether it's public or private sector, to minimise violence, and if KPIs are the Minister's preferred method of choice, well, that's the method we'll use here too. Currently, the only prison targets that involves prison safety targets involve serious assaults, and such assaults must, for example, involve hospital treatment. This needs to be extended to all kinds of violence if ministers are serious about a zero-tolerance approach to bad behaviour. Penalties could include fines for both public and private sector operators, with the money raised going towards making injury compensation schemes fit for purpose by widening the scope for claims, removing the unfair barriers throughout the process, and lifting awards to reflect the bravery and commitment shown by prison officers and other staff working within our prison system. Even ministers accept that staff cuts of more than 25% in the name of austerity have triggered the crisis. And this is evidenced by the recent rush to recruit more prison officers, but resignation rates have gone through the roof, with more officers now leaving the service each week than joining. The White Paper actually calls for an extra 5,000 prison officers to run the new generation of private prisons. But how will the Minister do this in light of their last failed recruitment drive? The second part of my bill enshrines into law a range of initiatives designed to protect staff and prisoners from violence and to encourage staff, especially prison officers, to stay in the job. The most wide-ranging of these is the Safe Inside Charter. This set of reasonable and straightforward principles for safe systems of work is endorsed by the Joint Unions in Prison Alliance, a coalition of 9 prison unions, namely the Prison Officers Association, the University and College Union, the UCU, who represent prison educators, the Royal College of Nursing, the BMA, the Probation Union, NAPU, National Association of Prison Officers, PCS, Unison, the GMB and Unite, of which, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm more than happy to declare I'm a member and chair of the Parliamentary Group. Thank you. These unions, these unions have long called for the Ministry of Justice to adopt the Charter and mandate other prison employers to do the same. Unfortunately, it seems that ministers won't consider this until every recognised union signs up, and this seems to me to be a rather flimsy excuse for inaction. So instead, let's make it the law, and we might call it the Safer Inside Law. There are some other vital steps that we could take to hold on to staff that may be beyond the scope of my bill, but I'm going to outline them anyway. Firstly, the government could accept all the peer review body recommendations, including the £3,000 pay rise for entry-level prison officers, and make sure future advice is legally binding on ministers. Secondly, we could cancel all plans for new private prisons until we get to grips with why they are up to 50% more violent than publicly run prisons. And thirdly, we could bring prison officer pension ages back down to 60, because 68 is simply too late. There are many other ways to make prison staff feel rewarded and not exploited, but I'm afraid I don't have the time to go into that today. Above all, Madam Deputy Speaker, my aim with this bill is to focus minds on the terrible conditions facing both staff and prisoners in our prison system, and to start a national conversation about how we may solve this crisis. It's time to replace warm words with action, and if ministers won't act, then we must work together cross-party, across this House. I'm grateful for all honourable and right honourable members who've indicated support for my bill, to pass the Safe Inside Law ourselves. Therefore, I humbly request that my bill be given due consideration and passed into law.
Thank you. The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As mayors that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Gordon Henderson, Wendy Chamberlain, Liz Saville-Roberts, Chris Stevens, Kenny MacAskill, Jim Shannon, John McDonnell, Richard Burgon, Paula Barker, Mary Kelly Foy, Ian Lavery and my good self.
Grahame Morris.
Prisons Violence Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday the 25th of February, Madam Deputy Speaker.